Hello, I'm Maggie Darling, and I want to welcome you here to number 11 Downing Street. We'll have several speakers here tonight from Street Action's partners in Burundi and South Africa, and we have Dr. Nigel Rollins from WHO, from the World Health Organization. He, alongside Street Action from Tombo and the University of KwaZulu-Natal, developed the research project that we're launching tonight. First of all, I'd like to introduce you to Joe Walker.
It's a privilege to be here, and I hope you'll find tonight both informative and enjoyable. When we build connections and relationships, it makes people's lives better. Not just for the street children themselves, but also for the network of people, our partner projects, our supporters, funders and policymakers who are committed to supporting them. What this evening is all about is making connections and relationships. We're here tonight to also celebrate the great work that is already happening with our partners on the ground, and to share with you our plans to build our capability to support even more work in the future. Street Action is a young organisation, but we are in it for the long term. As our strapline states, we are committed to street children through action and partnership. We've got 13 years experience, we've got long-term relationships and friendships, we've got partners, and we have a growing network of supporters both in the UK and now the United States through the launch of Street Action USA in San Francisco in April this year. So what is a street child? There are many definitions, but the street children our partners focus on are living on the streets 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, with no adult supervision.
Joe's outlined some of the why Street Action started. Well, I guess, in essence, that was the easy bit. But as you can imagine, growing from a Best Endeavours charity to a charity who's effective and working in the 21st century as an international street child organisation is where the challenges now lie. One important point to mention at this stage is that Street Action work with our partners at very different stages of their development cycle as charities themselves. New Generation in Burundi are a good example of a local charity working on the ground at a very early stage of their development. About 5 years ago, I received an email. It just said, "Hello Nick, how are you? I'm fine. I want to remind you of the shoes of player football. Now I'm in time of play football. Bye, Boaz." The email was remarkable because I knew that the boy in question was living on the streets in Bujumbura, the capital of Burundi, and he still managed to send me an email.
Tombo Street Children are a well-established organisation in South Africa and have in many ways become a model of good practice, and as we talked about earlier, has certainly supported our partner New Generation in some of their development over the last year. I met Tom in 1996 in East London in South Africa, and that was when I first met Street Children. And working with Tom and then meeting Mandy in 1998, they've both been a huge inspiration to me.
We started to Tombo together, and for me, when Tom came to me with an idea of Tombo, the fact that I am a former street child, I grew up on the street and I lived in a children's home, and I got interested in what he was saying, that please join me to run this organization because you lived on the street and I want you to run the organization together in partnership. I said to him, well, yes, I will help you to run the organization.
The situation living on the streets is hideous. It's out of the frying pan into the fire, you might say. They come from situations that are traumatic in themselves, excuse me, and then on the streets there are further complications. It's trauma upon trauma upon trauma. And so the issue of street children is one that has been peripheral on many development agendas because it's complicated. It's complex to understand because unless you have someone like Mandy who's able to articulate the pain of those experiences, it's very difficult to put into place strategies that will effectively deal with the issue. And in Durban, like many other cities, there's been a backlog of a lack of strategies.
And people sometimes say that statistics are the devil's business, but in terms of being able to change things. As much as we can be moved by the human aspects of stories and pictures and music put together well, there's also a value in having statistics and objective things. And in terms of being able to do that with the substance of a university behind you, and being able to say that this is of this nature, was in one sense, as Maggie was saying, the connections of people in this room. It was the way in which I could, in some ways contribute to this. But it starts putting down things on paper that people can't argue with, because this is exactly what the children said to us and what we found. This was information that was collected well. It was done well by a team that were well trained. It was done in partnership with Street Action. Street Action were very integrally involved with this, as were Ntombo. And it was because both Ntombo and Street Action recognised the value of having information collected in this way for a whole series of purposes that are going to go well beyond today and this room. So what do you conclude from that? First of all, children come to the streets because life is unbearable at home. Despite the many harsh realities of being on the street, most children still choose to be there. The stresses that they encounter are very frequently institutionally driven by police, social services, and many of the difficulties and vulnerabilities are even more intense for girls because of gender inequities. So the question I ask myself at the end of this, will this research make any difference? But I can't follow through on this research in any way, given the type of work that, although I'm still involved with HIV work in children, it is not among street children. And so it is a difficult question. And in some ways Maggie was talking about making connections. I think therefore the question is for everybody in this room is, you've seen pictures, you've heard music, you've heard stories, you've seen data that are objective and well conducted. What are the connections in this room, and in what way can this research make a difference? I'm certainly convinced that if we don't critically look at the circumstances of children living on streets, that we are doing them a disadvantage. More research will certainly be good for them. And that being involved with research is certainly a way of protecting and promoting children's rights in general, and they should not be excluded. And this is the first time that this type of work is being done.
It's great to see Street Action gaining momentum and starting to develop these relationships and connections.
It's sometimes been said that street children are the orphans of the AIDS orphan crisis. And we hope that this research and what you've heard tonight, the findings and the results, will really start to inform both organisations like Street Action, partners on the ground, but also policymakers to really start to put street children back on the map. And as Nigel said, we hope to be able to launch the full report of the research in the new year, and we will be doing that in February at an event in London, so please do keep in touch with us about that. When we build connections and relationships, it makes people's lives better. Tonight has been about relationships. It's been about raising the issue of street children through the work of our partners in South Africa and Burundi. It's been about building connections. So as we grow, we can become more effective in the way that we support Ntombo street children in South Africa and New Generation in Burundi, and other partner projects we may become connected to in the future. Graca Machel, the wife of Nelson Mandela, sums it up like this. Children do not live in the abstract. They live in a country. They live in a province. They live in a district. They live in a place. From global institutions to local community-based organisations, we all have a responsibility. So it's important that national governments, religious groups, civil society organisations, workers' unions, and everyone concentrate their efforts in making the lives of children better. This is our responsibility, and it's a challenge, and it's a call to action. This is Street Action's vision and commitment, and we hope that you will join us on this journey.